If you're looking for a love story that will grip you, twist your expectations and leave you breathless, then you've come to the right place. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to join our family for more thrilling tales like this one. Now let's dive into the dark heart of New York, where love blossoms in the most unlikely of places, and a man who swore off emotion finds himself utterly undone. Angelo the Ice Moretti was a name whispered in hushed tones across the 5 boroughs of New York City, a name synonymous with power, ruthlessness, and an almost chilling lack of human emotion. His empire was built on a foundation of fear and respect, his decisions as sharp and final as the blade of a stiletto. No one dared cross him, no one dared defy him, and certainly no one had ever seen him display a flicker of vulnerability. His eyes, the color of a winter storm, held a gaze that could freeze a man's blood, and his smile, a rare and fleeting thing, was more a promise of pain than of pleasure. Angelo inherited the Moretti crime family from his father, a man equally as feared, but with a sliver of warmth Angelo had long since extinguished within himself. He'd seen what sentimentality could do, how it could weaken a man, make him predictable, and ultimately lead to his downfall. So Angelo built walls around his heart, impenetrable and cold, making him the most formidable boss the Moretti family had ever known. His days were a meticulously planned dance of power plays, negotiations, and the occasional swift removal of an obstacle. He moved through the world like a shadow, leaving behind only the undeniable proof of his existence: the thriving businesses, the loyal foot soldiers, and the hushed whispers of his name. He owned clubs, restaurants, construction companies, and a web of illicit operations that ran smoother than any legitimate corporation. His suits were always impeccable, tailored to perfection, reflecting the meticulous order he demanded in every aspect of his life. The night he met Isabella Bella Rossi was a night like any other, or so he thought. He was at the Obsidian, one of his most lucrative clubs, a place where the city's elite and the underworld's movers and shakers mingled under the pulsating lights. Angelo was there for a meeting, a quiet discussion about expanding into new territories, a delicate dance of power and persuasion. He sat in his usual private booth, a vantage point from which he could survey the entire club, his eyes missing nothing. The air was thick with the scent of expensive cologne, whiskey, and the unspoken tension that always accompanied Angelo's presence. His lieutenants, Franco and Marco, stood guard, their faces impassive, their loyalty unwavering. Then she walked onto the small stage in the center of the club, a vision in a simple black dress that somehow managed to outshine every sequined and glittering gown in the room. Bella Rossi. She wasn't a singer, a dancer, or an entertainer in the usual sense. She was a witness to a crime committed by a rival family, a crime that had inadvertently spilled onto Moretti territory. Her testimony was crucial, and Angelo had sent his men to persuade her to keep silent. But Bella wasn't like the others. Her eyes, a vibrant emerald green, met his across the crowded room. There was no fear in them, no hint of intimidation, only defiance and a fiery spark that intrigued him. She was addressing the owner of the club, a nervous man named Sal, who was stammering apologies and attempting to placate her. Bella, however, was not easily placated. She was demanding justice, demanding answers, demanding that something be done about the innocent bystander who had been injured in the crossfire. Her voice, though not loud, carried an authority that surprised Angelo. It was clear, firm, and resonated with an unwavering moral compass. He watched, captivated, as she dismissed Sal's weak excuses, her chin held high. Her dark hair, a cascade of curls, framed a face that was both delicate and strong, a paradox that mirrored her spirit. Angelo had dealt with countless women in his life, malls, mistresses, informants, but none had ever held his attention with such effortless command. He found himself leaning forward, an almost imperceptible movement, his usual stoicism momentarily forgotten. Franco, ever vigilant, noticed the shift in his boss's demeanor and exchanged a quick, confused glance with Marco. He had expected her to be a trembling wreck, a victim easily manipulated. Instead, she was a force of nature, a tempest in a teacup, and he, the unshakable Angelo Moretti, found himself undeniably intrigued. He saw the fire in her eyes, the stubborn set of her jaw, the way her small hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wasn't just angry, she was righteous. He had never encountered such unwavering moral conviction, not in his world, not in his life. It was a foreign concept, almost alien, and yet it drew him in like a moth to a flame. He signaled Franco to bring her to his table. Franco, accustomed to Angelo's unspoken commands, moved with practiced ease through the throng of people, his imposing figure clearing a path. Bella, seeing Franco approach, narrowed her eyes, her posture stiffening, ready for a confrontation. When Franco gently but firmly guided her towards Angelo's booth, she didn't resist, but her gaze never left Angelo's, a silent challenge passing between them. As she stood before him, bathed in the dim, seductive lighting of the club, Angelo felt a peculiar jolt. It wasn't just her beauty, though she possessed an undeniable allure. It was the sheer audacity of her presence, her refusal to be cowed by his reputation, by his aura of danger. He gestured to the empty seat opposite him. "Sit," he commanded, his voice a low rumble that usually sent shivers down spines. Bella hesitated for a beat. Then, with a defiant flick of her hair, she sat. Her movements were graceful, even in her anger. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands, but her eyes, those captivating green eyes, remained locked on his, unblinking. "You're Isabella Rossi," he stated, not a question, his voice devoid of any warmth. "And you're Angelo Moretti," she retorted, her voice clear and steady, despite the obvious danger she was in. "The Ice King they call you, though I find nothing particularly regal about a man who allows violence to run rampant on his territory." A faint, almost imperceptible smirk touched Angelo's lips. "Bold words, Miss Rossi. Most people prefer to keep their opinions of me to themselves." "I'm not most people," she shot back, her gaze unwavering. "And I believe in speaking my mind, especially when innocent lives are at stake." He leaned back in his seat, studying her, a silent predator assessing his prey. But there was something different in his gaze, a hint of something beyond mere appraisal. He was dissecting her, trying to understand the source of her unyielding spirit. "You witnessed something, Miss Rossi, something that concerns my family. I witnessed a man get shot. An old man, a waiter who was just trying to earn an honest living. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in the crossfire of your associates." Her voice was laced with an accusation, a raw, undeniable anger. "And what exactly do you intend to do about it?" Angelo asked, his voice still calm, but with an underlying steel that would have sent lesser individuals scrambling. "I intend to tell the truth," she declared, her eyes blazing. "To the police. To anyone who will listen. Someone needs to be held accountable." Angelo felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in years. A grudging admiration. She was remarkable. Foolish perhaps, but undeniably remarkable. He had expected fear, tears, a plea for mercy. He got none of it. He saw only a woman consumed by a sense of justice, a woman who refused to be silenced. He considered his options. He could make her disappear, a quick, clean solution. It was his usual modus operandi. But for some reason, the thought brought with it an unfamiliar reluctance. He found himself drawn to her fire, to the unwavering strength in her emerald eyes. He had to break her, of course. That was the natural order of things in his world. But something deep within him, a dormant emotion he barely recognized, urged him to find a different path. He wanted to understand her, to unravel the mystery of her spirit. This was new territory for Angelo Moretti, and for the first time in a very long time he felt a stirring of something akin to curiosity, a dangerous emotion for a man in his position. This woman, Isabella Rossi, was a disruption, a discordant note in his perfectly orchestrated symphony of power. And he, the maestro of mayhem, found himself unexpectedly intrigued by the dissonant melody she played. The silence that followed Bella's declaration was thick with unspoken threats, yet Bella held her ground, her gaze firm, unyielding. Angelo continued to study her, his mind a whirlwind of calculations. His usual methods, the swift and brutal elimination of problems, seemed inelegant in her presence. There was an artistry to her defiance, a purity to her anger that he found himself strangely reluctant to defile. He needed her to be silent, but the usual intimidation tactics felt like a blunt instrument against the intricate mechanism of her will. He needed to understand what drove her, what made her so different. "You speak of accountability," Angelo finally said, his voice a low, even tone. "In my world, accountability is often a complicated affair. There are many layers, many unseen hands at play." "I don't care about your world," Bella retorted, a tremor of frustration in her voice. "I care about an innocent man who was hurt because of your world." He was saving up to send his granddaughter to college. Now, he's in the hospital, his arm shattered, his future uncertain. Angelo felt a faint stir of something akin to guilt, a sensation so foreign he almost dismissed it. He was a man who ordered deaths, orchestrated wars, and yet, the plight of an old waiter resonated with him in a way he couldn't explain. "And what if I told you I could ensure his granddaughter goes to college? That his medical bills would be covered? That he would never have to work another day in his life, living comfortably, free from worry?" Bella's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise breaking through her defiant mask. She had expected threats, coercion, perhaps even violence. She had not expected an offer of philanthropy, especially not from the notorious Angelo Moretti. "You would do that?" she asked, skepticism lacing her tone. "I would," Angelo confirmed, his gaze unwavering. "In exchange for your silence. No police, no interviews, no whispers. The incident would vanish, like it never happened." She bit her lip, her emerald eyes scanning his face, searching for a hidden agenda, a trick. She was an intelligent woman, a paralegal who understood the nuances of negotiation and the dangers of dealing with men like Angelo. But the image of old Mr. Rossi, his kind eyes clouded with pain, flashed in her mind. His granddaughter, a bright young woman with dreams of becoming a doctor, deserved a chance. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do this for him?" Angelo paused, considering his answer carefully. He couldn't tell her the truth. That her fierce spirit had awakened a dormant empathy within him, that he found her unwavering moral compass surprisingly alluring. He couldn't admit that the thought of silencing her, of extinguishing that fire, felt profoundly wrong. "Because it serves my interests," he lied smoothly, a practiced ease in his deception. "Loose ends are bad for business. Your public outcry would bring unwanted attention. This way everyone benefits. Mr. Rossi gets his peace, his granddaughter gets her future, and I maintain my tranquility." Bella narrowed her eyes, still wary. But the logical part of her brain couldn't deny the immediate benefits for Mr. Rossi. "And what about the men who actually shot him?" she pressed, her sense of justice still burning fiercely. Angelo's eyes darkened imperceptibly. "They will be dealt with. In my own way. You can be assured of that." A shiver ran down Bella's spine, a clear understanding of the implied threat, the unspoken promise of brutal retribution that would undoubtedly be far more effective than any police investigation. She knew what Angelo Moretti was capable of. She had read the headlines, heard the rumors. Yet, looking into his cold, calculating eyes, she saw a flicker of something else, something she couldn't quite decipher. A strange sense of fairness, perhaps? Or simply a pragmatic approach to problem solving, even if that problem was a human life. She took a deep breath. "How do I know I can trust you?" she challenged, her voice still firm, though a touch of weariness had crept in. "You don't," Angelo replied, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "But I assure you, Miss Rossi, when I make a promise I keep it. My word is my bond, a bond stronger than any legal document you could ever conceive of." Bella considered her options. Going to the police would put her in immense danger, with no guarantee of justice for Mr. Rossi. Angelo Moretti's offer, while coming from a morally dubious source, seemed to offer a concrete solution to the immediate suffering. It was a devil's bargain, but a bargain that promised solace to an innocent man. "I want to see Mr. Rossi first," she stated, making her own demand. "I want to hear from him that he agrees to this, and that he receives everything you promised. And I want proof that his granddaughter's college fund is secure." Angelo nodded, a flicker of approval in his eyes. She wasn't just accepting, she was negotiating. He liked that. He liked her tenacity. "Agreed. My men will arrange for you to visit him tomorrow. You will have full access to his financial arrangements. And if you find anything amiss, you are free to do as you please." He knew she wouldn't. Once she saw the extent of his generosity, the genuine relief in Mr. Rossi's eyes, her moral compass would guide her to accept. As Bella stood to leave, a strange tension hung in the air. She felt a pull, a curiosity towards this enigma of a man who could order death with one breath and offer salvation with the next. Angelo, for his part, found himself not wanting her to leave. He wanted to continue their unconventional negotiation, to peel back the layers of her defiance, to understand the fire that burned so brightly within her. He was captivated, a dangerous state for a man who prided himself on his control. Over the next few days, Bella was granted full access to Mr. Rossi. She saw the relief in his eyes as he received the news of his medical bills being covered, and the substantial sum deposited into his granddaughter's college fund. She reviewed the legal documents, meticulously drawn up by Angelo's own lawyers, ensuring everything was legitimate and binding. The men who had injured Mr. Rossi, she later learned through the grapevine, had disappeared. No one spoke of it, but the message was clear. Angelo Moretti had kept his word, in his own brutal, efficient way. Despite her agreement, Bella found herself drawn into Angelo's orbit in an unexpected way. He would send her small, innocuous gifts, a rare edition book on a legal topic she had mentioned, a box of artisanal chocolates she had admired. He would accidentally appear at the same coffee shop she frequented, always initiating a conversation about trivial matters, never about their arrangement. He was subtly, expertly, weaving himself into the fabric of her life, and Bella, against her better judgment, found herself not entirely resisting. He was charming when he chose to be, and surprisingly intelligent. He spoke of art, of history, of philosophy, revealing a depth that contradicted his ruthless reputation. He made her laugh, a genuine, unforced laugh that surprised even herself. He was dangerous, she knew, a predator cloaked in an expensive suit, but he was also undeniably fascinating. One evening, he invited her to a private dinner at his penthouse. She almost declined, her instincts screaming at her to maintain distance, to protect her heart. But her curiosity and a strange, undeniable pull won out. The penthouse was breathtaking panoramic views of the city, exquisite artwork, and a surprisingly comfortable atmosphere. A stark contrast to the coldness she had initially expected. Over a meal prepared by a private chef, they spoke for hours not about the underworld, but about their lives, their aspirations, their quiet moments. Angelo listened intently, his gaze never leaving her, absorbing every word, every nuance of her expression. Bella found herself confiding in him, sharing her dreams of making a difference in the world, her passion for justice, her frustrations with the systemic inequalities she witnessed daily. She found herself seeing beyond the Ice King and glimpsing a different man, a complex, layered individual she was beginning to understand. He, in turn, spoke sparingly of his past, but enough to hint at a lonely childhood, a life of duty and expectation, a path he hadn't chosen but had been born into. He spoke of the heavy weight of responsibility, the constant need for vigilance, the isolation of his position. For the first time, Bella saw a crack in his impenetrable facade, a glimpse of the man beneath the legend. He confessed in a low, almost hesitant voice, that her defiance had been a revelation, a shock to his meticulously ordered world. "You see things differently," he admitted, his storm-gray eyes unusually soft. "You look for the light in the shadows, while I have only ever embraced the darkness." Bella felt a pang in her chest, a strange mix of sympathy and fear. She was treading on dangerous ground, allowing herself to be drawn into a world that could consume her. But the more time she spent with him, the more she saw the subtle shifts in his demeanor, the way his eyes would soften when he looked at her, the slight smile that would play on his lips when she challenged him. She was breaking through his walls slowly, steadily, and the realization both thrilled and terrified her. She was falling for the Mafia boss with no heart, and the irony was not lost on her. He, the man who couldn't be broken, was finding himself utterly undone by the woman he couldn't break. Their dance had begun, a perilous waltz between two opposing forces, and the stakes were higher than either of them could imagine. The initial negotiation had blossomed into something neither Bella nor Angelo had anticipated. Their clandestine meetings at the coffee shop, the thoughtful gifts, the long, intense conversations, all painted a picture that deviated wildly from the expected narrative of a powerful mob boss and his coerced witness. Bella found herself increasingly drawn to Angelo's complex personality. He wasn't the one-dimensional monster the rumors portrayed. He possessed a sharp wit, an encyclopedic knowledge of history and art, and a surprising gentleness when he chose to display it. He listened to her with an intensity that made her feel truly heard, truly seen, a sensation she rarely experienced in her demanding profession. He remembered the smallest details she shared, often bringing them up in later conversations, proving his attentiveness was genuine. She found herself analyzing him, trying to reconcile the ruthless Ice King with the man who could discuss the nuances of Renaissance art or the philosophical underpinnings of justice. He was a puzzle, and she, with her lawyer's mind, was determined to solve him. She noticed the subtle shifts in his demeanor when he was around her. The hard lines around his eyes would soften. A genuine smile would occasionally replace his usual enigmatic smirk, and his posture, usually rigid with authority, would relax. He would often find excuses to touch her, a gentle hand on her arm. When she was making a point, a brief touch of his fingers as he handed her a cup of coffee. These were small gestures, almost imperceptible, but to Bella they spoke volumes. Angelo, for his part, was in uncharted territory. He had always prided himself on his emotional detachment, on his ability to make decisions without the distracting influence of sentiment. But Bella was chipping away at his carefully constructed walls, brick by painful brick. Her laughter, a clear, melodious sound, resonated in the cavernous halls of his heart. Her fiery spirit, her unwavering belief in justice, her passionate arguments, they all captivated him, making him question the very foundations of his existence. He found himself looking forward to their meetings with an eagerness he hadn't felt since childhood. He would rearrange his schedule, postpone important affairs, all for the chance to spend another hour in her company. One evening while walking through Central Park, a rare indulgence for Angelo, they found themselves discussing their respective worlds. Bella, in her usual direct manner, challenged him. "Angelo," she began, her voice soft but firm. "You talk about justice, about order, but your world is built on the opposite. On fear, on violence, on breaking the law." Angelo stopped, turning to face her, the city lights twinkling behind him. "My world has its own order, Bella. A brutal one, perhaps, but an order nonetheless. And sometimes, it delivers a form of justice that the official channels fail to provide. But at what cost?" She pressed, her emerald eyes searching his. "The cost of human lives? The cost of freedom? The cost of your own soul?" He looked away, a flicker of pain in his eyes that she almost missed. "My soul, Bella, is a luxury I cannot afford. I have a family to protect, an empire to maintain. I was born into this and I will die in it. But you don't have to be defined by it," she countered. Stepping closer, her hand gently touching his arm. The contact sent a jolt through him, a warmth he hadn't felt in years. "You are more than the Ice King, Angelo. I see it." He turned back to her, his gaze intense, searching. "What do you see, Bella?" "I see a man burdened by responsibility, yes," she admitted, her voice low. "But I also see intelligence, a fierce loyalty, and a heart. Buried deep, perhaps, but it's there." Her words struck a chord deep within him, a place he had thought long dead. He had never allowed anyone to see past the facade, never allowed anyone to speak of a heart. He had cultivated the image of the emotionless leader, the unbreakable force. And yet, here she was, seeing through it all, peeling back the layers with a casual ease that both terrified and exhilarated him. He found himself wanting to confess, to tell her everything, to lay bare the struggles and the compromises that had shaped him. But the habits of a lifetime, the ingrained need for control and secrecy, held him back. Instead, he changed the subject, steering the conversation towards a less personal topic, but not before Bella saw the vulnerable flicker in his eyes. She knew then, with a certainty that both thrilled and scared her, that she was making progress. She was thawing the Ice King, one gentle touch, one honest conversation at a time. The stakes were incredibly high. Her world and his were diametrically opposed. A relationship between them would be a tightrope walk over an abyss. But the connection they were forging felt too real, too powerful to ignore. One day, an unforeseen event tested the fragile bond they were building. Bella was working late at her office, reviewing a complex case, when a blackout plunged the entire neighborhood into darkness. As she fumbled for her phone, a menacing shadow fell across her desk. Two figures, heavily built, emerged from the gloom, their faces obscured by ski masks. Before she could react, they grabbed her, forcing a cloth over her mouth. The last thing she remembered was the bitter taste of chloroform and a sudden sharp pain in her head. She awoke hours later, disoriented and groggy, in a dimly lit, unfamiliar room. Her head throbbed, and her wrists were bound tightly to a chair. Fear, cold and sharp, clawed at her throat. This was the reality of Angelo's world, a world she had been naively trying to humanize. She was a pawn, caught in a game far larger and more dangerous than she could comprehend. Her captors were rough, their voices guttural, and an advantage over the Moretti family. Angelo, meanwhile, was in a frenzy. When Franco reported Bella's disappearance, a cold dread unlike anything he had ever experienced gripped him. His usual composure shattered, replaced by a primal fear. He barked orders, his voice laced with an unfamiliar urgency. Find her. Tear the city apart if you have to. I want her back now. His men, accustomed to his calm authority, were shocked by his barely contained fury. They had never seen him so unhinged, so consumed by a single purpose. He knew with a chilling certainty that this was about her. Someone had found out about their connection, about his burgeoning weakness, and they were using it against him. He activated every resource, every contact, every dark corner of his vast network. Information flowed in, fragments and whispers, painting a grim picture. The Ginellis, they had always been a thorn in his side, but now they had crossed an unforgivable line. They had touched his Bella. The thought sent a surge of pure, unadulterated rage through him. His heart, the one she had begun to awaken, was now beating with a ferocious, vengeful rhythm. He would make them pay. He would burn their empire to the ground for daring to lay a hand on her. For the first time, Angelo felt a raw, unprotected emotion that transcended strategy, transcended power. He wasn't the Ice King anymore. He was just a man terrified for the woman he was unknowingly falling in love with. The glimmer of humanity Bella had seen in him was now burning bright, fueled by a fierce, protective instinct that promised devastating consequences for anyone who dared to threaten her. This was no longer just about maintaining order or consolidating power. This was personal. This was about Bella. The Ginelli compound was a fortress, nestled in a secluded industrial area on the outskirts of Queens, a heavily guarded relic of an older, more brutal era of the Mafia. But to Angelo it was a target, a symbol of their audacity, and a place where he would unleash a fury that had been dormant for too long. He arrived not with a whisper but with a roar. A convoy of black SUVs, filled with his most loyal and heavily armed men, descended upon the compound like a storm. The element of surprise, combined with the sheer force of the Moretti assault, left the Ginelli guard scrambling, caught completely off guard. Angelo was at the forefront, not merely directing but leading the charge. His usual impeccably tailored suit was discarded for tactical gear, and in his hands a semi-automatic rifle. His face was a mask of grim determination, his storm-gray eyes burning with an icy fire that promised retribution. He moved with a brutal efficiency, a primal predator reclaiming what was his. Doors were kicked in, windows shattered, and the sounds of gunfire echoed through the night. His men were ruthless, each one fueled by Angelo's unspoken command for maximum impact. They knew the message: touch what is Moretti's and face his unbridled wrath. Inside, Bella was bound and gagged, struggling against her restraints, her heart pounding with terror. She had endured hours of interrogation, veiled threats, and the chilling realization that her life hung by a thread. The Ginellis, brutish and crude, had tried to extract information about Angelo's operations, his weaknesses, anything they could use. But Bella, despite her fear, had remained defiantly silent, her mind refusing to betray the man who, despite his darkness, had shown her a fragile glimpse of light. She knew that any information she divulged could be a death sentence, not just for Angelo, but for countless others. She would not be their pawn. Then the cacophony began: the shattering glass, the urgent shouts, the relentless gunfire. A flicker of hope, fragile but persistent, ignited within her. Could it be Angelo? Could he really have found her? The door to her makeshift cell was violently kicked open, and there he stood, a formidable silhouette against the chaos. Angelo. His eyes, usually cold and detached, were now alight with a fierce, protective fire. He saw her, bound and disheveled, a bruise forming on her cheek, and a guttural growl escaped his lips. The sight of her, injured, sent a fresh wave of rage through him, intensifying his already burning desire for vengeance. He moved towards her with an urgency that startled even her. He cut her bonds with a quick, precise movement of his knife, his hands surprisingly gentle as he checked her for further injuries. "Bella," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, a sound she had never heard from him before. He pulled her into a protective embrace, holding her tightly, as if to reassure himself that she was real, that she was safe. Bella, overwhelmed by relief and the sheer intensity of his presence, clung to him, burying her face in his shoulder, the scent of gunpowder and his unique cologne a strangely comforting mix. The rest of the Ginelli compound was systematically cleared. Angelo, holding Bella close, led her out of the room, his gaze sweeping the surroundings, ensuring no one posed a further threat. He positioned her behind his most trusted men, Franco and Marco, who stood like impenetrable shields. He then turned his attention to the remaining Ginelli forces, his face a mask of cold fury. The Ginelli boss, a sniveling man named Riccardo, was eventually dragged before Angelo, his face bloodied and bruised, his eyes wide with terror. "Riccardo," Angelo said, his voice dangerously low, each syllable dripping with venom. "You touched what is mine. You crossed a line. And for that, you will pay dearly." Riccardo stammered, attempting to plead for mercy, but Angelo was beyond reason, beyond negotiation. The image of Bella, bound and bruised, replayed in his mind, fueling his unwavering resolve. He made an example of Riccardo, a swift, brutal display of power that sent a chilling message to anyone who dared to challenge the Moretti family, and more specifically to anyone who dared to threaten Bella. The aftermath was grim. The Ginelli compound was left in ruins, a stark testament to Angelo's devastating wrath. As they drove away in his armored vehicle, the sirens of responding police cars wailing in the distance, a quiet tension filled the air. Bella sat beside Angelo, his arm still protectively around her, her body still trembling from the ordeal. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a man transformed. The ruthless mob boss was still there, but beneath the hardened exterior, she saw a raw, powerful emotion. A love so fierce it had manifested as pure, unadulterated fury. She had seen him kill, seen him exact brutal justice, and yet she felt no fear of him, only a profound, unsettling realization of the depth of his feelings for her. He drove her directly back to his penthouse, bypassing her own apartment, an unspoken command that she would remain under his protection. Once inside the opulent sanctuary, he immediately called for his private doctor to examine her, his concern palpable. While the doctor attended to her, cleaning the small cuts and bruises, Angelo paced the living room, a restless lion in his den. He only relaxed when the doctor assured him she was physically unharmed, albeit shaken. He sat beside her on the plush sofa, his hand gently taking hers. "Are you all right, Bella?" he asked again, his voice still rough with concern, his storm-gray eyes searching hers. She nodded slowly. I'm okay, Angelo. Thanks to you." He squeezed her hand. "No one touches you, Bella. No one. Do you understand?" His voice held a possessiveness she hadn't heard before, an undeniable claim. She looked into his eyes, and in that moment, all the unspoken emotions between them materialized. The fear, the anger, the relief, and beneath it all, the burgeoning, undeniable love. "I understand," she whispered. He pulled her into another embrace, holding her tightly, his chin resting on her head. This time there was no pretense, no subtle game. It was a raw, honest expression of his deepest fear and his profound relief. He had almost lost her, and in that near loss, he had realized the terrifying extent of his feelings. He, Angelo Moretti, the Ice King, was irrevocably, dangerously in love with Isabella Rossi. The walls he had spent a lifetime building had crumbled to dust, not under siege, but under the gentle, persistent touch of her unwavering spirit. The thought both exhilarated and terrified him. He was vulnerable, exposed, and utterly undone. But as he held her close, feeling the steady beat of her heart against his, he knew with absolute certainty that he wouldn't have it any other way. The night had been a brutal awakening, a testament to the darkness of his world, but also to the surprising, terrifying power of his love. The aftermath of the Ginelli incident left Bella reeling, but also with a profound understanding of Angelo's world and of his feelings for her. She had seen the raw, unbridled fury of the Ice King, a side of him that struck terror into the hearts of men. Yet she had also experienced the fierce, protective embrace of the man beneath the legend, a man who had moved heaven and earth to ensure her safety. She was no longer just intrigued. She was undeniably, irrevocably falling for him. The danger was palpable, the risks immense, but the connection they shared felt too vital to deny. Angelo, for his part, made no attempt to hide his feelings any longer. The experience of almost losing her had shattered his carefully constructed emotional barriers. He was openly attentive, his gaze lingering on her, his touch a constant, reassuring presence. He insisted she stay at his penthouse, citing safety concerns, but Bella knew it was more than that. It was his way of keeping her close, of making her a permanent fixture in his life. She agreed, not out of fear, but out of a growing need to be near him, to explore the uncharted territory of their relationship. Life in Angelo's penthouse was a strange blend of luxury and latent tension. She had the run of the sprawling apartment, surrounded by exquisite art and breathtaking views of the city. Private chefs catered to her every culinary whim, and security personnel, discreet but ever-present, ensured her safety. Yet, beneath the veneer of opulence, Bella was acutely aware of the dangerous undercurrents that defined Angelo's existence. She witnessed his meetings, overheard hushed conversations about business matters, that left her with a chilling understanding of the realities of his world. She saw the unwavering loyalty of his men, and the fear they inspired in others. She challenged him constantly, testing the boundaries of their newfound intimacy. She questioned his methods, his decisions, his very way of life. And to her surprise, Angelo listened. He didn't always agree, and sometimes his responses were pragmatic and brutal, but he listened. He respected her intelligence, her unwavering moral compass, and he found himself, for the first time, truly considering perspectives outside of his own rigid worldview. He would spend hours explaining the intricate web of alliances and rivalries, the delicate balance of power, and the historical context of his family's operations. He didn't expect her to condone it, but he wanted her to understand. One evening, as they sat on the terrace overlooking the glittering cityscape, Bella turned to him. "Angelo," she began, her voice soft but firm, "I love you. And I know despite everything that you love me too." Her confession hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Angelo's eyes, usually so guarded, softened with an emotion so profound it almost overwhelmed him. He had never heard those words directed at him, never allowed himself to even contemplate them. But hearing them from Bella, from the woman who had effortlessly dismantled his defenses, sent a surge of warmth through his entire being. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers, his grip firm and reassuring. "Yes, Bella," he admitted, his voice a low, rough whisper, a voice stripped bare of its usual authority. "I love you. More than I ever thought possible. More than I ever allowed myself to feel." It was a monumental confession for a man who had built his life on emotional suppression. And with those words their relationship shifted, deepened, moving beyond fascination and attraction into the perilous realm of true love. But with love came a new set of challenges. Bella's presence in his life was a glaring weakness. a vulnerability his enemies would undoubtedly exploit. He knew he had to protect her not just from outside threats, but from the very nature of his existence. He had to decide how to reconcile his world with hers, or if such a reconciliation was even possible. Bella, too, grappled with the implications of their love. She was a woman of law and justice, deeply committed to upholding ethical principles. Angelo was the embodiment of everything she stood against. Could she truly build a life with a man whose hands were stained with blood, whose empire was built on illicit activities? Could she turn a blind eye to the darkness that surrounded him, or would she be consumed by it? These questions haunted her, even as her heart soared with the joy of his confession. One afternoon, a delivery arrived at the penthouse, a series of large unmarked boxes. Angelo watched as Bella opened them, her eyes widening in surprise. Inside were legal textbooks, meticulously organized case files, and state-of-the-art legal software. He had set up a fully functional, private legal office for her within the penthouse. "You said you wanted to make a difference," he stated, his gaze steady. "You said you wanted to fight for justice. Do it here. From here you are safe. And you can still change the world one case at a time." Bella looked at him, tears welling in her eyes. It was his way of trying to bridge their two worlds, to allow her to pursue her passion without being exposed to the constant danger of his. It was a compromise, a gesture of love that spoke volumes. It wasn't perfect, it didn't solve all their problems, but it was a start. It showed her that he was willing to adapt, to try to make space for her in his life, even if that space was within the confines of his golden cage. She embraced him tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "Thank you, Angelo," she whispered. "Thank you." As she began to set up her new office, a new dynamic emerged in their relationship. Bella continued her legal work, focusing on pro bono cases and social justice issues, using her skills to help those who couldn't help themselves. Angelo, surprisingly, found himself offering his resources, his vast network, to assist her, albeit in a way that often skirted the edges of legality. He would provide anonymous financial backing, gather information through his channels, and even ensure the cooperation of reluctant witnesses, all to aid Bella in her pursuit of justice. Their love was a dangerous dance, a constant negotiation between light and shadow. She was slowly, imperceptibly, bringing a touch of humanity to his brutal world, while he was, in turn, offering her a protection and a depth of love she had never known. Their future was uncertain, fraught with peril, but in each other's eyes they found a reflection of hope, a promise of a love that defied all odds. The Mafia boss with no heart had found his heart, and it beat fiercely, dangerously, for the one woman he couldn't break, the woman who was slowly, irrevocably transforming him. Their journey was far from over, and the shadows of his world still loomed, threatening to engulf them both. But for now, in the quiet sanctuary of his penthouse, surrounded by the city's twinkling lights, they held on to each other, two souls bound by an unlikely, extraordinary love. Life at the penthouse settled into a rhythm that was, for Bella, a constant negotiation with her conscience. She loved Angelo deeply and fiercely, a love that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. She saw the genuine tenderness beneath his hardened exterior, the fierce loyalty he extended to those he cared for, and the surprising intelligence that permeated every aspect of his complex life. Yet, she could not ignore the inherent darkness of his world. The news reports of gang violence, the whispers of illicit dealings, the constant undercurrent of danger that permeated their lives. It was a stark reminder of the chasm that separated their two worlds. Angelo, for his part, was a man transformed. His days were still consumed by the demands of his empire, but his nights, and increasingly parts of his days, were dedicated to Bella. He found himself seeking her opinion on matters Not always about his business, but about moral dilemmas, about the human condition. He would watch her as she passionately debated legal points, her eyes sparkling with conviction, and a strange sense of pride would swell within him. He was a better man. With her, he knew, a man capable of feeling, of loving, of experiencing a vulnerability he had once considered a fatal weakness. He had learned to embrace it for her. One evening as they shared a quiet dinner, the city lights painting a glittering backdrop, Bella decided it was time to confront the elephant in the room. "Angelo," she began, her voice soft but resolute, "we can't keep living like this. This bubble of luxury with the unspoken darkness just outside. I need to understand more. I need to know everything." Angelo's hand, reaching for his wine glass, paused. He had known this conversation was inevitable. He had braced himself for it. He met her gaze, his storm-gray eyes reflecting a mix of apprehension and unwavering devotion. "What do you want to know, Bella?" he asked, his voice low. "Everything," she reiterated. "Your family's history, the true extent of your operations, the choices you've made and why. The blood on your hands, Angelo. I need to know it all. Not just the censored version you allow me to see." He looked away, a flicker of pain crossing his features. He had always protected her from the brutal realities of his world, shielding her from its ugliness. But he knew she was right. Their love, if it was to truly survive, needed to be built on a foundation of absolute truth, no matter how harsh. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "It's not a pretty story, Bella. It's a story of survival, of power, of brutal necessities. Tell me," she insisted, her hand reaching across the table to cover his, a gesture of unwavering support. "Tell me everything." And so he began. He spoke of his grandfather, an immigrant who arrived in America with nothing but dreams and a fierce determination to protect his family. He spoke of the harsh realities of the early 20th century, the poverty, the discrimination, the desperation that led many to seek solace and power in the burgeoning underworld. He described how his grandfather, a man of surprising intellect and charisma, rose through the ranks, establishing the Moretti family as a formidable force in the bootlegging era. He spoke of the code of honor, however twisted it might seem to outsiders, that governed their actions. He then delved into his father's reign, a period of consolidation and expansion, a time when the Moretti family diversified its interests, venturing into legitimate businesses, while maintaining its illicit enterprises. He spoke of the constant threats, the betrayals, the brutal wars that had to be fought to maintain their dominance. He painted a picture of a world where loyalty was paramount, where weakness was exploited, and where violence was often the only language understood. Finally, he spoke of his own ascent, the burden of leadership, the impossible choices he had to make. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He spoke of ordering hits, of eliminating rivals, of making decisions that had led to bloodshed and suffering. He spoke of the cold pragmatism that had become his defining characteristic, the emotional detachment he had cultivated as a shield. He didn't ask for her forgiveness, didn't try to justify his actions with excuses. He simply laid bare the truth of his existence, the truth of the man she loved, the truth of the Ice King. Bella listened, her face pale, her eyes wide with a mix of horror and understanding. She felt the weight of his confessions, the sheer darkness of the world he inhabited. There were moments when she wanted to recoil, to pull away from the man who had just admitted to such atrocities. But then she would look into his eyes, and see not a monster, but a man burdened by his past, shaped by circumstances, and now undeniably vulnerable for her. She saw the pain in his gaze, the quiet suffering of a man who had sacrificed his soul for his family, for his empire. When he finished, a heavy silence descended upon them. Bella took a deep breath, trying to process the enormity of what she had just heard. "How do you live with it, Angelo?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "How do you sleep at night?" He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. "I do what needs to be done, Bella. For my family. For my people. It's the only life I've ever known. The only path I was given. But you have a choice now." She countered, her hand tightening on his. "You have me. You have a chance for something different." He scoffed softly, a bitter edge to his voice. "A choice? Do you truly believe I can simply walk away from this, Bella? From decades of tradition, from countless enemies, from a life that is so deeply ingrained in my very being? It's not a suit I can simply shed. But you can change." She insisted, her voice filled with conviction. "You've already changed. I've seen it. You've shown me a heart, Angelo. Don't tell me it's too late to use it for good." He looked at her, a profound conflict warring in his eyes. Her unwavering faith in him, her persistent belief in his capacity for good, was a powerful force. It was chipping away at the cynicism he had cultivated for a lifetime. He wanted to believe her, wanted to imagine a different life. A life where he could be with her, openly, without the constant threat of his past. But the reality of his world was a harsh mistress, one that rarely granted such liberties. "It's not that simple, Bella," he finally said, his voice tinged with a weariness she hadn't heard before. "My enemies would see it as weakness. My family would see it as abandonment. It would destabilize everything. It would put us all in greater danger. Then we find a way," she declared, her determination shining through. "We find a path. Together. You can't tell me after all you've built that you can't build something new. Something legitimate. Something that doesn't involve violence and fear." He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not just the woman he loved, but a beacon of hope in the darkness he had so long inhabited. Her unwavering belief in him, her refusal to be broken by his truth, was a testament to her strength and a profound source of inspiration. He had always seen her as the one woman he couldn't break, but now, he saw her as the one woman who could save him. The conversation had opened a door. A dangerous, exhilarating door to a future they both yearned for, but one that was fraught with insurmountable obstacles. Angelo understood the immense sacrifices he would have to make. The wars he would have to fight, not just against his enemies, but against the very fabric of his identity. Bella understood the immense risk she was taking, stepping further into a world that could consume her, but she also knew with every fiber of her being that she couldn't walk away from him. Their love was a bond forged in fire, a testament to the power of connection that transcended even the darkest of worlds. The truth had been unveiled, and with it, a new chapter in their perilous love story began. A chapter where they would either forge a new path together or be destroyed by the forces that sought to keep them apart. The confession, the raw unveiling of Angelo's dark past, had created an even deeper, albeit more complicated, bond between them. Bella, instead of recoiling, found her love for him intensified, woven with a fierce determination to help him find a different path. She saw not just the man of violence, but the man burdened by his legacy, yearning for something more, something pure. Angelo, in turn, found himself increasingly reliant on her moral compass, her unwavering belief in his capacity for good. He began to see his empire not just as a source of power and protection, but as a potential tool for transformation. "What if," Bella began one morning as they sipped coffee on the terrace, "we started legitimizing your businesses? Truly legitimizing them. Investing in new, ethical ventures. Slowly, steadily transforming the Moretti family into something respectable." Angelo listened, a thoughtful expression on his face. This wasn't a new idea. He had always maintained legitimate fronts, but the core of his wealth, the true source of his power lay in the shadows. To truly legitimize meant to strip away that power, to expose himself to the vulnerabilities of the legal world. But seeing the hopeful spark in Bella's eyes, he found himself considering it more seriously than ever before. "It's a long road, Bella," he mused, his voice a low rumble. "A dangerous one. It would involve divesting from certain operations, making powerful enemies, and a complete restructuring of our organization. But it's possible, isn't it?" she pressed, her emerald eyes shining with conviction. "You have the resources, the intelligence, the power. Imagine, Angelo, building an empire that stands on its own merits, not on fear." He looked at her, truly seeing the depth of her belief, and a hesitant smile touched his lips. "Perhaps," he conceded, the word hanging in the air like a fragile promise. "Perhaps it is possible." This was the turning point. Angelo began, cautiously at first, to explore Bella's radical idea. He brought his most trusted advisors, Franco and Marco, into his confidence, explaining his vision, albeit in a carefully couched manner. Franco, ever pragmatic, saw the financial potential. Marco, ever loyal, saw the peace it could bring to his boss. They were skeptical, but their loyalty to Angelo outweighed their doubts. Bella, with her legal expertise, became his strategic partner, advising him on the intricacies of corporate law, ethical investments, and risk management. She identified legitimate businesses to acquire, helped restructure existing ones, and drafted detailed plans for transitioning illicit operations into legal enterprises. It was a monumental undertaking, a complete overhaul of a century-old empire. The process was slow, painstaking, and fraught with peril. There were resistance from within the family, whispers of weakness, and outright defiance from those who clung to the old ways. Angelo dealt with these challenges with a measured hand, a combination of firm authority and strategic concessions. He was changing but not weakening. The biggest challenge, however, came from the outside. The rival families, who had always viewed the Moretti Empire as a constant threat, saw Angelo's shift towards legitimacy as an opportunity. They perceived it as a sign of weakness, an invitation to move in, to seize his territories, to dismantle his power. The Ginellis, still smarting from their devastating defeat, were particularly eager for revenge. They began to probe, to test the boundaries, launching a series of calculated attacks on Moretti assets and personnel. One such attack occurred at a newly acquired legitimate construction site. A controlled explosion, designed to damage property and intimidate workers, sent a clear message. Angelo was furious, but he restrained his usual impulsive wrath. "They want us to react with violence," he explained to Bella, his jaw clenched. "They want to draw us back into the old ways. We will not give them the satisfaction." Instead, Angelo responded with a calculated display of strength, but not overt violence. He increased security at all his legitimate businesses, invested heavily in surveillance technology, and leveraged his political connections to ensure swift legal repercussions for any acts of sabotage. He sent out subtle but undeniable warnings through his network, demonstrating that his shift towards legitimacy did not equate to a loss of power or a decline in his ability to protect his interests. Bella watched him, a mix of admiration and apprehension in her heart. He was walking a tightrope, balancing his desire for change with the brutal realities of his world. He was still the Ice King, capable of wielding immense power, but now that power was being channeled, refined, directed towards a different future. She knew that this path was dangerous, that every step towards legitimacy was a step away from the only world he had ever known, and a step towards a new kind of vulnerability. Despite the challenges, their efforts began to yield results. Moretti-owned businesses, once shadowed by their illicit counterparts, began to thrive in the legitimate market. Construction projects were completed ahead of schedule, restaurants garnered rave reviews, and clubs became destinations for their excellent service and sophisticated ambience. Angelo even began investing in community projects, funding scholarships, and renovating neglected parks, initiatives that Bella spearheaded. These acts of philanthropy, while initially met with skepticism, slowly began to change the public perception of the Moretti name. The biggest impact, however, was on Angelo himself. He found a new sense of purpose, a satisfaction in building something tangible, and enduring, something that wasn't solely built on fear. He would often watch Bella, her face alight with enthusiasm as she discussed a new legal case or a community initiative, and a profound sense of peace would settle over him. He was still a man of shadows, but she was bringing light into his life, one project, one conversation, one loving touch at a time. Their love story was no longer just about two individuals from opposing worlds. It was about the potential for transformation, for redemption, for the powerful forces of love to conquer even the darkest of empires. Bella was breaking Angelo's heart open, not with force, but with an unwavering belief in his inherent goodness. And in doing so, she was not just changing him, but also the world he inhabited, one legitimate business, one act of kindness, one brave step at a time. The path ahead was still fraught with danger, with the ever-present threat of his past rearing its ugly head. But now they faced it together, a formidable team bound by a love that defied all odds. The glimmer of legality was slowly but surely becoming a radiant dawn, promising a future that was once unimaginable. The transition to legitimate businesses, while progressing, was not without its constant reminders of Angelo's past. The whispers of disloyalty among some of the older, more traditional members of the Moretti family grew louder. They saw Angelo's shift as a betrayal of their heritage, a sign of weakness, and a dangerous move that jeopardized their established power. Angelo dealt with these dissenters with a firmness that left no doubt about his authority, but also with a surprising restraint, a testament to Bella's influence. He offered them opportunities within the new legitimate ventures, promising greater financial security and a cleaner future. Those who still refused to adapt found themselves quietly but effectively sidelined, their power slowly eroded without a single drop of blood being shed. However, the external threats intensified. The rival families, particularly the Ginellis, saw Angelo's reforms as an opportunity to strike. They interpreted his shift away from overt violence as a softening, a loss of his edge. They began to escalate their attacks, not just targeting businesses, but now subtly, indirectly, aiming at elements close to Angelo's heart. One evening, Bella received a chilling anonymous email at her pro bono office, detailing a legitimate charitable foundation she was passionately involved with. The email contained specific, damaging financial irregularities, insinuating that the foundation was a front for money laundering, implicating Bella directly in the alleged scheme. Bella's heart sank. She knew the accusations were false, but the detail and malicious intent were undeniable. Someone was trying to frame her, to discredit her, to destabilize Angelo by attacking his greatest strength, her unwavering integrity. She immediately showed the email to Angelo. His face, usually so controlled, hardened with a terrifying anger. "They're trying to get to me through you," he stated, his voice a low growl. "They think if they tarnish your name, they break my spirit. But these accusations are completely false," Bella insisted, her voice trembling with indignation. "This foundation is legitimate. We help so many people." "It doesn't matter, Bella," Angelo replied, his eyes cold and dangerous. "In this game, perception is everything. They want to create a scandal, to force a wedge between us, to make you question our future." He activated his network, not to exact immediate revenge, but to uncover the source of the attack. His men worked tirelessly, leveraging their unique access to information, their ability to navigate the shadows. They quickly discovered that the source was indeed the Ginellis, who had painstakingly fabricated a web of false evidence to implicate Bella and the Foundation. Their aim was not just to discredit her, but to create a legal quagmire that would distract Angelo, draining his resources and forcing him to choose between protecting his family and protecting Bella's reputation. This was a new kind of war, a battle fought not with bullets, but with legal maneuvering, public perception, and psychological warfare. Angelo knew he couldn't resort to his old methods of outright violence. To do so would confirm the Ginelli's accusations, proving that he was still the ruthless mob boss, validating their attempts to discredit Bella. He had to fight fire with fire, but with a different kind of fire, the fire of legality and truth. He brought in his top legal team, the same lawyers who had meticulously drawn up Mr. Rossi's arrangements. He tasked them with dismantling the Ginelli's elaborate scheme, finding every flaw, every fabricated piece of evidence. Bella, with her sharp legal mind, became an invaluable asset, working tirelessly alongside Angelo's legal team, analyzing documents, cross-referencing information, and strategizing their defense. This was her world, the world of justice and truth, and she was determined to clear her name, not just for herself, but for Angelo, for their future. As the legal battle unfolded, the pressure mounted. The media, fueled by anonymous leaks from the Ginellis, began to publish sensationalized stories, questioning Bella's integrity and insinuating her involvement in illicit activities. Bella faced public scrutiny, accusations, and the painful realization that her good name was being dragged through the mud. There were moments of despair, moments when she questioned if their love was worth the immense cost. But then she would look at Angelo, his unwavering support a constant anchor, and find her resolve renewed. Angelo, meanwhile, was under immense strain. He saw the pain in Bella's eyes, the toll the public attacks were taking on her. He had to resist the primal urge to unleash his full fury on the Ginellis, to silence them permanently. But he knew for Bella, for their future, he had to play by the rules. At least for now. He channeled his rage into meticulous planning, into ensuring every legal loophole was closed, every piece of evidence meticulously presented. He was learning a new way to fight, a way that honored Bella's values, even as it challenged his own. The legal proceedings were a protracted and exhausting affair. Bella, with Angelo's legal team backing her, systematically dismantled the Ginellis' fabricated evidence, exposing their lies and their malicious intent. She presented irrefutable proof of the Foundation's legitimate operations, highlighting the good it had done in the community. Angelo's hidden network, working behind the scenes, subtly leaked information that exposed the Ginellis' own history of fraud and corruption, turning the tables on their accusers. Finally, after weeks of intense legal battles, the truth prevailed. The court ruled in favor of Bella and the Foundation, completely exonerating them. The Ginellis' attempts to discredit her were exposed as a malicious smear campaign, their reputation severely tarnished. The media, quick to pivot, published retractions and apologies, praising Bella's integrity and resilience. The public, initially swayed by the sensational headlines, now rallied behind her, admiring her courage and dedication. It was a hard-won victory, a testament to their combined strength. Bella had faced the darkness of his world head-on and emerged victorious, her spirit unbroken. Angelo had fought a war on a new battlefield, restraining his primal instincts and proving that he could adapt, that he could evolve. The shadow of the past had loomed large, threatening to engulf them, but together they had pushed it back, creating a new space for their love to grow. This battle had solidified their bond, proving that their love was not just a fragile emotion, but a powerful force capable of overcoming immense obstacles. They had faced the fire and emerged stronger, more united than ever, ready to face whatever new challenges the future and Angelo's lingering past might throw their way. The legal victory against the Ginellis was more than just a win in court. It was a profound affirmation of Bella's resilience and Angelo's evolving character. It showed the world and more importantly each other that their love was not a weakness to be exploited, but a strength to be reckoned with. The public perception of Bella, initially tainted by the smear campaign, had transformed into one of admiration and respect. Her integrity shone through, solidifying her position as a formidable advocate for justice. For Angelo, it was a crucial step in his transition. He had fought a battle on legal terms, proving that he could protect his interests and those he loved without resorting to the brutal methods of his past. The relationship between Angelo and Bella deepened further, solidifying into an unbreakable bond. The shared experience of fighting against a common enemy, of facing down the shadows of his past, had forged an even stronger connection between them. Bella no longer felt like a visitor in his world. She was an integral part of it, shaping its future. Angelo, in turn, allowed himself to be fully vulnerable with her, shedding the last vestiges of the Ice King in their private moments. He found comfort in her touch, solace in her presence, and unwavering belief in her counsel. Their efforts to legitimize the Moretti Empire continued with renewed vigor. With the Ginellis weakened and discredited, Angelo had more breathing room to implement his reforms. He systematically divested from the remaining illicit operations, using the profits to further invest in legitimate businesses. Construction companies flourished, entertainment venues became renowned for their ethical practices, and the Moretti brand slowly began to shed its notorious past, gaining a reputation for quality and community involvement. Bella played a crucial role in this transformation, meticulously scrutinizing contracts, ensuring legal compliance, and championing ethical business practices. However, the world of organized crime was a relentless beast, and old habits like old enemies died hard. While the Ginellis were largely neutralized, other smaller factions, and some disgruntled elements within the Moretti family itself, still harbored resentment and sought to undermine Angelo's authority. They saw his legitimate ventures as a betrayal of their traditions, a dangerous flirtation with the enemy. One quiet afternoon, as Bella was leaving a local community center where she volunteered, a sleek black car swerved sharply, almost hitting her. A man in a darkened window made a subtle, threatening gesture before speeding away. Bella's heart pounded, a cold dread washing over her. It was a clear message, a reminder that even with Angelo's power, she was still vulnerable, still a target. She immediately reported the incident to Angelo, her voice shaking with residual fear. Angelo's face hardened. He knew this was a test, a calculated probe to see if he had truly shed his violent past. His men, ever vigilant, quickly identified the car and the individuals involved, disgruntled former associates who felt marginalized by Angelo's new direction. This was an internal threat, a betrayal from within his own ranks. The old Angelo would have swiftly and brutally eliminated them, but the new Angelo, the one shaped by Bella's love, chose a different path. He summoned the perpetrators not to his private, secluded offices, but to a neutral location, a dimly lit, high-end restaurant, a place where business was discussed, not blood spilled. He sat at the head of a long, polished table, Bella beside him, her presence a silent but powerful statement. The men, intimidated by Angelo's presence and Bella's unwavering gaze, shifted uncomfortably. Angelo spoke, his voice low and calm, yet carrying an undeniable steel. "You believe my new direction is weakness. You believe I have forgotten our ways. You are mistaken." He then laid out their transgressions, presenting irrefutable evidence of their attempts to undermine his authority and threaten Bella. He spoke not of retribution, but of consequences. He presented them with a choice. Fully embrace the new legitimate direction of the Moretti family, with clear roles and opportunities within the burgeoning legal enterprises, or face complete and utter ostracization, stripped of all family ties and protection, left vulnerable to the very rivals they had sought to empower. The silence that followed was heavy with tension. These men had only ever known a world of fear and violence, and Angelo was offering them a path to a different future, albeit one that demanded loyalty and a complete reorientation of their lives. Bella watched, her heart pounding. This was a critical moment, a test of Angelo's transformation. Would they embrace the change, or would they cling to the old ways, dragging them both back into the darkness? After a prolonged, uncomfortable silence, one of the men, an elder who had served Angelo's father, slowly nodded. "We understand, boss," he said, his voice gruff. "We will follow your lead. This new path, it is different, but we will adapt." The others, seeing their leader's decision, reluctantly followed suit, their faces a mixture of apprehension and grudging respect. Angelo had diffused a potentially violent internal conflict with diplomacy and strategic leverage, a testament to his evolving leadership. This incident marked a significant turning point. It solidified Angelo's authority within the transitioning Moretti family, proving that his embrace of legitimacy was not a sign of weakness, but a new, more refined form of power. Bella, witnessing his masterful handling of the situation, felt a renewed sense of hope. He wasn't just changing, he was truly transforming, leading his family towards a brighter future, one step at a time. Their love was no longer a secret, a dangerous liaison in the shadows. It was a force for change, a beacon of hope in a world that had long been defined by darkness. Angelo, the Mafia boss with no heart, had found his heart, and with it, a purpose beyond mere power. He was building an empire, not of fear, but of legitimacy, driven by the unwavering love of the woman he couldn't break, the woman who had dared to see the good within him, and inspired him to become the man he was always meant to be. Their journey was far from over, but together, they were forging a new path, an unbreakable bond against the shadows of the past, towards a future built on love, respect, and a surprising, powerful kind of justice. Years passed, marked by unwavering dedication and a continuous, delicate dance between their two worlds. The Moretti family, under Angelo's astute leadership and Bella's unwavering ethical guidance, completed its remarkable transformation. The legitimate businesses flourished, becoming powerful entities in their own right, respected for their innovation, quality, and commitment to community. The illicit operations, once the bedrock of the Moretti Empire, were systematically dismantled, their remnants absorbed or dissolved. The old guard, those who had clung to the traditions of violence and fear, either adapted or faded into obscurity, finding themselves powerless in Angelo's new legitimate domain. Angelo Moretti, once the Ice King, was now a respected, albeit still formidable, figure in New York's business and philanthropic circles. He was still a man of immense power, but that power was now wielded for good. He funded massive urban renewal projects, invested in cutting-edge medical research, and established numerous charitable foundations, many of which Bella personally oversaw. His storm-gray eyes, though still holding a flicker of their former intensity, now often softened with a warmth that Bella alone could evoke. He had found a peace he never thought possible, a purpose that transcended the brutality of his past. Bella Rossi, no longer just a paralegal, had become a highly respected legal advocate and a tireless champion for social justice. Her pro bono work expanded into a thriving nonprofit law firm, funded generously by Angelo's legitimate enterprises. She took on cases others deemed unwinnable, fought for the marginalized, and ensured that justice in its purest form was served. Her name became synonymous with integrity and compassion, a stark contrast to the shadowy world she had once almost been consumed by. She was the light that had guided Angelo out of the darkness, and her brilliance only grew brighter with time. Their love story, once a dangerous secret, was now an open, albeit still whispered legend. They rarely spoke of Angelo's past, but its shadow, though diminished, served as a constant reminder of the incredible journey they had undertaken. They were a power couple, known for their influence, their wealth, and their unwavering commitment to each other, and to making a positive impact on the city. One sunny afternoon, Angelo and Bella stood on the terrace of their penthouse, overlooking the bustling city that was once Angelo's battlefield. The sky was a vibrant blue, a stark contrast to the perpetual gray of his former world. Bella leaned into him, her hand resting over his heart. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly, her voice filled with contentment. "Leaving the old life behind?" Angelo turned to her, his gaze unwavering, filled with an emotion that was a potent blend of love, gratitude, and profound peace. "Regret," he mused, a genuine smile gracing his lips, a smile that radiated warmth, not a hint of threat. "The only regret I have, Bella, is that it took me so long to find you. To find this." He gestured to the city sprawling beneath them, a city he now sought to build up, not tear down. "You showed me that a man doesn't have to be defined by his past. You showed me that a heart, even one long frozen, can thaw. You showed me how to live." Bella smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "And you, Angelo, showed me that love can truly conquer all. That even in the darkest of places, hope can bloom." He tightened his arm around her, pulling her closer. Their journey had been perilous, fraught with danger, betrayal, and immense sacrifices. They had faced down enemies, battled internal demons, and redefined the very meaning of power and loyalty. But through it all, their love had remained an unyielding force, a testament to the transformative power of human connection. They had built a new life, a new legacy, one founded on respect, integrity, and a profound, unbreakable love. Angelo Moretti, the Mafia boss with no heart, had not only found his heart but had learned to lead with it, guided by the unwavering spirit of the woman he couldn't break. And in doing so, they had not just changed their own lives, but had left an indelible mark on the city they called home, ushering in a new dawn for the Moretti name, a dawn bathed in the light of redemption and enduring love. Their story was a living testament that even in the darkest corners of the world, love can blossom, changing not just individuals but entire legacies. Bella, the unwavering spirit, had broken through the ice, revealing the vulnerable, loving man beneath. And Angelo, the once heartless boss, had found not just love, but redemption, proving that even the most hardened heart can be softened by the right woman. They stood there, together, a monument to their extraordinary journey, their love a beacon for all who believed in the power of transformation. And that, my friends, is where our story of Angelo and Bella finds its beautiful, triumphant conclusion. A story of darkness and light, of power and love, and of the incredible journey one man takes when he finally opens his heart. If you were as captivated by their journey as I was, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more enthralling narratives. Until next time, keep believing in the power of love, even in the most unexpected places.